For centuries, Korea existed as a single, unified civilization. Long before modern ideologies, before communism and capitalism, before superpowers fought over influence, the Korean Peninsula was bound by shared language, culture, and history. The roots of today's division do not begin with a line on a map, but with a long chain of political vulnerability, foreign intervention, and global rivalry that slowly tightened around the peninsula. The story begins in the Joseon Dynasty, which ruled Korea for over 500 years. Joseon society was deeply influenced by Confucian values, emphasizing hierarchy, loyalty, and stability. For much of its existence, Joseon maintained relative unity and continuity, but it was also cautious and resistant to rapid modernization. While this approach preserved tradition, it left Korea vulnerable as the world around it began to change. By the late 19th century, powerful empires were competing for dominance in East Asia. China, Russia, and Japan all saw Korea as strategically vital. Japan, in particular, viewed the peninsula as both a buffer and a gateway to the Asian mainland. As Joseon weakened internally due to corruption, factionalism, and economic strain, foreign influence intensified. Japan's victory in the Russo-Japanese War marked a turning point. With Russia defeated and China weakened, Japan emerged as the dominant force in Korea. This culminated in Japan's formal annexation of Korea. For decades, Korea was ruled as a colony. Korean language, culture, and political identity were suppressed. Industrial development occurred, but it served Japanese interests rather than Korean. This period left deep scars. It also planted the seeds of division. Korean resistance movements formed both inside and outside the peninsula. Some activists looked to nationalism and independence above all else, while others were drawn to socialist ideas spreading from neighboring regions. These ideological differences were not yet a national split, but they quietly grew beneath the surface. Japan's defeat in World War II suddenly ended colonial rule, but liberation came without preparation. Korea regained freedom, yet it lacked a unified government or agreed vision for the future. Into this vacuum stepped the victorious Allied powers. The United States and the Soviet Union, former wartime allies, now viewed each other with growing suspicion. To manage Japan's surrender, the peninsula was divided along a temporary line. Soviet forces would accept surrender in the north, while American forces would do so in the south. The division was meant to be administrative and short-term. No Korean representatives were consulted. What began as a practical decision soon hardened into something far more permanent. In the north, Soviet influence shaped the emerging political structure. Local communist leaders, including Kim Il-sung, gained prominence with Soviet backing. Land reform and state control appealed to many who had suffered under colonial rule and inequality. In the south, the United States supported anti-communist leaders, emphasizing elections and private ownership, though political instability and repression were common. As the Cold War intensified, cooperation between the United States and the Soviet Union collapsed. Plans for a unified Korean government failed. Instead, two separate states emerged, each claiming to be the legitimate government of all Korea. The ideological divide now had borders, armies, and competing visions of legitimacy. The Korean War turned division into tragedy. What began as a military conflict became an international war involving global powers. Cities were destroyed, families were separated, and millions of lives were lost or uprooted. When fighting ended, the peninsula remained divided, almost exactly where it began. But the cost was immeasurable. The war froze the division in place, but it did not resolve it. North and South Korea evolved in starkly different directions. The North became increasingly centralized, militarized, and isolated. The South experienced authoritarian rule before gradually transforming into a democratic and economic powerhouse. Despite their shared heritage, the two societies drifted further apart with each passing generation. The division of Korea was not the result of a single decision or event. It was the outcome of centuries of vulnerability, decades of colonial trauma, and the global struggle between rival systems of power. Koreans did not choose division, but they have lived with its consequences ever since. Today, the border between North and South Korea is one of the most fortified in the world. It stands as a physical reminder of unresolved history. Yet beneath that division lies a deeper truth. Korea was not always split, and its people were once one. Understanding why Korea was divided requires looking beyond ideology and borders. It requires recognizing how global forces can reshape the destiny of a nation, and how decisions made without a people's voice can echo for generations. The Korean Peninsula remains a symbol of the Cold War's unfinished business. Its story is not only about separation, but about identity, resilience, and the long shadow of history that still shapes the present.